This is especially for small businesses because a lot of the information, that you'll come across online and on LinkedIn, which is, I think, where most of us are, is targeted towards bigger businesses. And actually, as a smaller business, you've got a different set of advantages, and you've also got a different set of needs. So it can be very, I suppose, it can be confusing, and it can be unproductive, really, to kind of immerse yourself in advice that really isn't suited to you. So this is specifically for smaller businesses. So brand as competitive advantage for small businesses. And let's get started. So being good at what you do isn't always enough. And I think we've all got experience of this where, that core thing that you do, you're actually very good at it, but it doesn't always translate into business or customers. And it can be very frustrating. That waiting to be discovered, that waiting to be found, and why aren't people noticing how good you are? And especially if you see maybe competitors who don't do work that's as good as you do, or their products maybe aren't as good, or their customer service maybe isn't as good, and yet they seem to be able to win the business that you can't. So what we're going to try and cover in this hour is how we can become the business that people remember, because that's like the first step, and then to encourage people to choose your business when they're choosing from others who offer maybe something similar to what you do, which is the case for most businesses, whether they're big or small. There's a similarity, and branding helps separate that out. So a little bit about me. My name is Mary Fleming. My business is Mary Fleming Design, and I'm a branding specialist. So the route I came through into branding is through originally a marketing degree, though I'm definitely creative leaning rather than analytical. That's kind of like my space. I don't enjoy the analytics. I'm much more about finding what it is about you that is unique, and what we can kind of bring to life and bring forward. And I don't make things up. I basically draw out what's already there, whether it's like in a personal brand or a business brand, or an overlap of the two, which is usually the case with a small business. And these are kind of the branding specialist areas or schools, if you like, that I've come through. And I'm originally from sunny Bray, which I think is where Kieran lives. If anyone's been in Bray, this view here is, it's kind of like iconic, that view from Brayhead down towards the seafront. And I've since moved, which it feels like yesterday, it was actually 19 years ago, to just outside Gorey in County Wexford. So I'm very familiar with both, lived in the States for a few years. I'm familiar with kind of that side of things, and also maybe like the urban setting, the rural setting, and the different challenges that businesses face. I'm the eldest of 7 children, and my first experience of brand was really Levi's jeans. Don't know if anyone remembers having like a thing about Levi's jeans. And because there were 7 of us, we could never afford for everybody to have Levi's jeans. They were quite expensive at the time. Instead, this was what, we got at Christmas, which was great, but it just wasn't just the Levi's jeans I was hoping for. So coming back to the workshop itself. So, the title of this is Your Brand as Competitive Advantage. And first of all, we need to look and see, okay, what is a brand? Because with many small businesses, you think of brand as just the kind of a nice to have. It's like a bit of decoration on top of your business. It's not like really integrated through your business. It's maybe seen as, and I know because people come to me looking for maybe a logo, or they might struggle with choosing colors or fonts, or struggle sort of with social media, what do you put out there? I don't have a logo, and as though a logo is going to fix everything. So the definition of a brand is a customer's perception. So you have an influence over that, but you can't ultimately control it. So it's their perception of what a product or service represents and how it makes them feel. And the feeling part could be trust. It could be a feeling that there's no substitution for what you do. That can be a broad enough range, but it is definitely customer led and influenced by you, with intention, and that's really important. So here we have at the top of the triangle, like the branding triangle. The things that we typically talk about or see would be like the logo, your website, probably product packaging, maybe your social media, and things like that. But all of that needs to be based on like a solid foundation of your positioning in the marketplace, the target market. So that's like literally just the people that you want to work with, and that it makes sense for you, it's a good fit. Your overall mission and purpose, what you're about, why you do what you do, and what drives you, your values. And this area here can get quite nitty gritty, but it forms the foundation for all of this up here, and the two should work together. The name isn't on this bottle here, but I presume everybody knows what it is. And while the idea of a brand can seem like something arbitrary or an optional extra, the value of Coca-Cola brand is 120 billion, and this is a couple of years old now, and the value of everything else, so their assets, their formula and everything, is 50 billion. So the value of your brand in the form of brand equity, whether you're micro business or huge business, is massive, and it's the thing that you can actually scale. You can scale and own, where it can't be taken by somebody else. And regardless of the size of business, you can do that. In terms of differentiating business, in terms of being chosen, we're dealing with what I call the common brain that we all have. There's all of this stuff going on in your head. You're thinking of things like our brains are full all the time, and we're also dealing with all those incoming distractions. So it's very hard to grab someone's attention, but branding helps you do that. And they do say attention is the new oil. The risk of sameness is, and I suppose this can be a risk even with AI now. Everybody can generate graphics very, very easily, for example, using any number of AI tools. And there's a certain sameness amongst all of that material that helps actually everybody just kind of blend in again. So while it might have given you an edge in the earlier days, now it's like everybody's doing the same thing, and you're back to the same problem of sameness. And sameness for each of us competes for mental space in our brains, and it leads to people looking to compare more features, and the value of your business is less clear. And for that potential customer, choosing you is much harder, because it's almost impossible to determine, okay, why should I go with this business? And usually actually it boils down to price, where somebody is choosing somebody on price, which is never a good place to be, because it's always a race to the bottom. So just a little quick question, and something just to add into the chat, if you would. And off the top of your head, there's no right or wrong to this, but if there are other businesses with similar offering to yours, which I'm sure there are, what do you think makes customer choose you? So it sounds like you've already got a pretty good sense of what is different about what you're doing and why somebody might be attracted to you. And sometimes, like when you're put on the spot like that, that can be actually a very hard question to answer. And what you're talking about there are competitive advantages. Or if they're not quite competitive yet, there are ways that you can turn it into a competitive advantage. So making it more difficult for a competitor to copy. And that leads us to the other side of this. Okay, what is a competitive advantage? And this is the definition. A competitive advantage is a unique attribute, asset, or strategy that enables a business to outperform competitors, attract more customers, and earn higher profits. So it's something valuable. So something valuable is something that your customers value, something that is relevant to them. It's distinctive. You can call it out, and it's difficult to substitute or hard to copy. So it's not like somebody can kind of go, oh God, that's a great idea. Over there, what you're doing, I'm going to do that now. It's difficult to copy, and it's more ownable by you because of that. And in fact, being small can be a competitive advantage in and of itself. For example, large businesses, I think a small business, we tend to look to the larger business and go, oh, how can I ever compete with them? Because they've got the scale, they've way more resources at their fingertips. They're already recognized. I'm struggling to, gain greater visibility. Their advertising budgets tend to be much higher. They've got teams of people to do things and probably systems that are set up. And we overlook then the advantages that we have as smaller businesses, whether that's like a solo operator or like a small team. So smaller businesses benefit hugely from having more personality, greater flexibility, being able to flex with the needs of your customers. You don't have to be bound by a strict set of rules. It's up to you what how flexible or not you want to be. You can specialize more deeply. You can be known for a more particular niche than a bigger business. You can build closer relationships, as I think Ed was saying, or Eamon. And then the really big thing, of course, not to forget, is you, the human, at the center of it all. And we've done workshops in the past, maybe we'll do it again, on personal brand, which is a really, really big area, which I love to talk about, but I won't get into it here. But it is a huge selling point, and it's a huge advantage that you have as a small business owner, because it allows you to be more you. And that is something you've exclusive control over and which nobody else can copy. And just understanding the relationship between the personal you, that human, the personal brand, that forward-facing professional personal brand that you put out, and the business brand. So the brand linked directly to your business. There's an overlap between all three of these, and you get to decide how much overlap there's going to be, and that's going to be different for everybody, because your boundaries or where you decide to draw the line is going to be different. So that's an individual decision, but they do all overlap, and they all offer their own advantages, which you can bring forward into a competitive advantage for your business and into the brand. So the role of branding is to differentiate at the very kind of core. Branding differentiates, it gets your business seen, but being seen isn't always enough. Deciding also, there's the differentiation. What do you want to be known for? So that takes a whole step by itself. What are the things that you want to build a reputation for? What do you want people to associate with you? What do you want to reinforce over time? And kind of being all things to all people doesn't really serve you, and it doesn't serve your customer. While it's very tempting, and especially maybe when you're starting out, or you're in the weeds, it's very hard maybe to turn down business, or to refuse any maybe type of order that comes in the door. Second part, which is very relevant to branding, is how do you want to make people feel? And this is really a key part of the branding for a small business, because you have so much more control over this, between like the personal relationships that you're going to have with people, and also how you can have your hands or your fingers or whatever way you want to express that all over everything. You don't have to hand anything off to anybody else. and you've got greater control over this area. And branding, as we saw earlier, is a large part, is about how you're making people feel, whether you're building trust, and also that feeling that there is no substitute for what you do. You know, they feel in a safe pair of hands, or they know you're not going to let them down. And that reputation that you have goes into the room before you. All towards the end of making it easier for your customers to choose your business. So see you and then choose you. Not just being differentiated, because differentiation on its own isn't enough. It's not enough just to be different if it's not relevant to that customer that you want to work with. So you can see how there's a few moving parts to this. And we're taking customers, our potential audience, on that journey all the time of getting to know us, getting to like us, so developing a preference where they're more likely to choose us and trust us, and, you know, become our brand advocates, recommend us to other people. You know, if you needed something, and networking is great like that, where other people basically learn what you're about and will tell others on your behalf, you know, recommend you onto other people. So what I wanted to kind of run through here is competitive advantages that you may be overlooking in your own business. And I do think as small business owners, you know, you tend to be so busy, it can be very difficult to make that time to step back and look and see, okay, what actually do I have here? Where's the gold in between myself and the business offering that I have here? So basically, we're going to go into more detail of what you're known for, and how you do the thing that you do, and what it is that you do. So your approach would be in here. Anyway, starting off with your expertise. And this can be something that is very easy to take for granted. So that could be your subject knowledge, you know, that you've built up probably over years and years. And either by way of qualifications, which, you know, can stand on their own, maybe years of experience, and those years of experience might not even just be in what you're currently doing. You can bring experience from any kind of past jobs, any life experiences. All of this comes to bear on your expertise, and it kind of informs what you do and gives you insight into situations that other people won't have. So have a think about that. Your specialization. So looking at the customers that you serve already, and people that you worked with in the past, maybe, and maybe there's a different group of people altogether that you'd like to work with. So you're really looking for patterns here. Who do you find that you serve especially well? Like, and why are you a good fit? So for example, I have a client I'm working with at the moment who is in the holistic space and is also a psychotherapist. And at the start of our conversation, she was saying to me, I really don't want to turn anybody away. I want to help everybody. I'm really, really passionate about what she does. But when we kind of drill down into it, it became clear that really who she serves especially well would be women in midlife, so kind of 40 plus. And the reason she's a very good fit for them is she has a very deep empathy. Even though she's quite a young person herself, she's got just a natural empathy for what people are going through, and on the female side, and also they respond really well to her. So it's a really good fit. And in terms of her talking, you know, via her marketing, which, you know, Nicola does, she's talking more specifically to that person. So for example, at the start, you know, I want to help everybody. So a woman who has children who are either grown up or like late teens is not going to be interested in hearing about teething problems. It's the wrong audience. And it's the same. I know that's kind of a limited to men example, but it's the same on the if your audience was mostly men, and you had a product maybe that and a service that suited, I'm going to say maybe men in retirement, for example. but you want to help everybody, and you're talking about race cars, it's probably not going to be of as much interest, somebody in their 70s versus somebody in their 20s. So this is why it helps bridge that connection. It doesn't mean that you can't work with everybody, but in terms of your specialization, you know, it is much better to tighten that down all across the board. And your approach is another area where you can have very distinct competitive advantages. Sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister. This is essentially just your way of doing things, the way you generally do things, which you can really easily overlook. And it's a great exercise to go to customers and clients and just ask them, what is it about me that you've noticed that's different to others, or what you like? It might be that, you know, you have a very nice calm approach, a nice calm energy. You don't get too panicky. It could be that you have an ability to do things kind of faster. You're able to react quickly. You offer a more personal touch. That can be lovely, again, in the world that's gone very tech focused. Maybe you have a reputation for doing things extremely thoroughly. Somebody knows that when you do it, it might not be the most exciting thing in the world, but it'll be done well. But it's worth knowing what those things are. Your experience, the person's experience of working with you is another opportunity here for digging for competitive advantages. How easy are you to work with? Like, honestly, how easy are you to work with? How you communicate has a bearing. Like your emails, and just to give an example again, there's a guy I work with in Wexford, and they have a printing company, and his emails are like maybe 3 words long. You know, what do you want? Sort of questions. And I said to him one day, I said, you must be extremely busy that you don't have time to, you know, flesh the email out a little bit. And he was like really surprised. I said, you know, it just comes across as quite blunt. I mean, we get on quite well. And he's like, really? No idea. So it's something that maybe you just do all the time. You've no awareness of it, and it can be worth looking at. And kind of tied in with that is, how do you make people feel? Like, if people feel rushed, they're not going to feel special. What's your after purchase experience like? Is it once somebody's finished with you, you're off, forget about them and never go back again? And what happens if they have a problem or a complaint? How do you approach that? So this whole area of the customer's experience of working with you, you know, there's a lot more to that. But these are good questions to get started with. Your values, generally what you believe in or stand by, and looking at these to see, okay, how do these things influence the way I run my business? And a little bit of reflection to see, you know, to kind of uncover that, because again, that can be something that you do so subconsciously that you don't really realize these are things that you're bringing through. Like Nicola talked about integrity there. That could be something that you just assume everybody does, but of course it's not something that everybody does. And having that awareness of it, because you can bring that through into your branding. So how are we doing for time? Oh, okay. Your branding becomes this sort of onion where everything is influencing everything else. They're not like, while I'm talking about these things like they're separate entities, they're not. It's all overlapping and leaving clues for your customer. And at the core is that brand promise, that brand promise, that proposition, where you're building the brand around it. Okay, so the role of your brand's job, if you like, is to support your business and connect you with the people you want to work with, like at a very kind of simple level. So it is not something that's just separate to your business, and like that nice to have that we were talking about it. So when it's working like this, it will grow. It'll become better and better over time, kind of like an employee. If you can imagine having an employee who's loyal and stays with you, you know, you're going to look after them. They're going to look after you. They're going to have a greater understanding of how you work, and you basically gel well together and produce a better result. And that is the role of your brand. It's to support your business, to help it become more recognizable out in the marketplace, and to compel more people to action, and that action being to choose to work with you, and also to help you generate greater profit and not compete on price. So more sustainably, to do business more sustainably. In terms of the brand structure, if you like, if you can think of your brand like a tree, where down at the roots, you know, anchoring your brand to either, whether it's the seeing it as the whole world, or anchoring it into your specific sector or industry, would be your goals, your purpose, like the why you exist, your mission, what do you want to achieve, your values, what's important to you, and your overall vision, and connecting that to all of these other things, which are usually the things that we talk about, like social media. You know, I need to do more social media. I've got a trade show coming up. I'm part of this network community, or I've got to do a quotation or proposal. All of these are like little micro parts of your brand, but they're connected through that audience that makes sense for you to work with, which also connects then into your positioning. How do you position yourself in the marketplace in relation to competitors? But the connecting piece between these and all of these is your audience and your brand personality. Now, just a little exercise here, another little exercise. We're just going to dig for some gold. But instead of shovels, we're going to get our pens out and ready. And I can just, let me just stop sharing for 1 second. Sorry, I'm going to split people into breakout rooms. Are you happy to do breakout rooms? Yeah, thumbs up? Yeah?
Yep.
It can just be easier sometimes when you've got somebody to bounce the questions off. So let me just go back in here 1 sec. Thanks, Gavin. So what we want to ask in the breakout rooms, we want to identify competitive advantages, that we may be overlooking. So we talked a little bit about, okay, what do my customers value about working with me? So taking that as a starting point. And what do I do differently from others who offer something similar? It might be a little harder to answer. However, having an awareness of that is an advantage in and of itself, because if a potential customer is saying, well, such and such a person can do this, you know, can deliver it faster, can do it cheaper, whatever it is, you have an oversight of what is different, and also what you offer differently to them. Third question, what do I believe that influences how I choose to operate? And, you know, go back on that later while you're still in that zone, and also the next kind of filter, if you like, having, you know, looked at those areas, is to ask yourself, okay, is this relevant to my ideal customer? Like, which of these matters most? So rather than highlighting everything, identify what matters to that person I want to work with. Not who or, you know, somebody else tells you should be working with, because you want to knit the two of these together. And just keeping an eye on the time here. Also, you know, with those lists, and, you know, brainstorm with yourself, or if you have somebody else to do it with, brilliant. Ask yourself, can I make this distinctive, or could my competitors claim the same thing? And it could be that you say, you know, I provide great customer service. So maybe that just is too broad. So for something like that, maybe you need to just drill down into it and ask yourself, okay, and you know, ideally ask your customers as well, okay, what is it about my customer service that is different? just kind of go through the 5 whys with it. Why, and answer, and why again, and just really drill down into it. Is it believable? This is really important. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's easy to make maybe a promise or set an expectation that you can't deliver. To have a brand that is going to stand to you, and also to grow, and where you're going to continue building up those trust levels, and that relationship, either with like lots of people or with a few people, you need to actually walk your talk, and so, is it believable? Can I prove it through what I do? So to think through examples of that illustrate or demonstrate that point that you've made earlier. Can I prove it? And that other question, is it something that matters to my ideal customer? Distinctiveness, being seen is a really important part of branding, to get that visibility, but it's not enough on its own. Distinctiveness and consistency need to work together. So being distinctive, being able to be seen, and then connecting that with a consistent message. And that's that piece about what you want to be known for. What is that thing that you want to be known for? So being noticeable helps people recognize you to begin with, but that's not enough. You need to connect it with an association. So repeating a clear association, a message, or something that you talk about helps reinforce what you want to be known for. And while it can feel to you that you're repeating yourself ad nauseum, don't forget that the audience that you're working with are only being exposed to like a tiny percentage of your content in general, or may not even be listening to you, even if they're standing in front of you. So don't overestimate or underestimate the value of repetition and time. Giving things time, keep going, keep on going, stay with it. A question I don't think we'll have time for today, but it is, that kind of nutshell statement. I want to be known as the person who, or whatever it is that you do, who does this thing in this way. You can expand that out. I know there's only a short, small space here, and for these people. And if you already have a kind of a good sense of this, it helps to drill down even tighter, or get maybe a better understanding of, for example, the people that you serve, what's going on in their lives, what are the challenges that they generally have. Is there another way maybe that, using your unique skill set or competitive advantage, that you can help them even better? They can just kind of tighten all of this up. So I don't know if you want to take a screenshot of that and, put it at the back of your mind and have a think about it. So this is the last point for today, is turning your competitive advantage or advantages into your brand expression. So how do you translate it from those things we were talking about into that outward expression of your brand? So these are all the things, these are all the different ways, and there are more that you can express your brand. It can be through your pricing, but that's often not, it's often a surprise to think that's part of your branding, but it actually is. Collaborations, workshops, books, your brand story, all of these kind of deserve probably their own workshop. So in other words, if we're talking about brand expression, what would your audience see, hear, and experience when they are in contact with your brand? What's it going to be like? What would it feel like to work with you? If we're going back to those competitive advantages that we identified there in the breakout rooms, and you were to choose, okay, these are the ones I want to put forward. They're the ones that make sense. They're relevant to my audience. They're distinctive, so they've met those criteria. What would they feel like when somebody's working with you? And then in terms of your messaging, because a lot of people struggle with messaging, like, what do I say? How do I say it? So what tone of voice would you use with that when you're highlighting those advantages? What topics would you be likely to talk about consistently? Like what's going to keep coming up that is relevant and tied in with those things? And another one is what would you not talk about? So maybe there are whole subject areas that you don't get into. You've decided you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, or maybe you do talk about them. They can even be a point of differentiation. And that's for each person as an individual to decide and to think about what makes sense for your business, your type of business. And just very lastly, before we finish up here, and I hand you back over to Kieran, just some examples of clients that I've worked with in the past on branding, helping them to see, I suppose, their own competitive advantages, their own uniqueness. And the thing about branding is that it's sort of like a two-way thing where your brand is in and of itself a huge competitive advantage that you build. You're building brand equity, you're building equity in your business, like should you ever go to sell it. It sits on your balance sheet. So it's a standalone asset that you can sell in addition to being something that helps support your business while you're running it with it. That's really, really important. But it also, so brand is a standalone competitive advantage, and it also highlights the other competitive advantages that either you're not aware of yourself yet or that your customers don't see in you. So it's sort of like this circling effect. So this is Kelly Marie, jewelry designer in Kerry. And she said, like with the new branding, she could barely keep up with business. Jean runs Ignite, which is a business referral network, and having the branding in place has really helped her hit the ground running. Like it's 4 years old now and still going strong, and she's opened different branches around the country. Tower Hill Flowers was a new business with basically nothing, and it just helped her get established much more quickly by choosing a niche like in the floral market, which is huge, and the wedding market is so big. Like how do you make yourself different, and how do you connect with those people that you want to work with? So, and then Wexford Lavender Farm is a local business to me. That branding, it was a brand new business, and for instance, when COVID hit, she already had this recognition, so it just made it so much easier to go on to make that switch to online. And that can be true for any business here, whether it's on, a shift to online, or maybe it's a new product or a new service that you want to introduce, you can leverage the brand reputation or the brand advantage that you've already built in one area, and you can bring it across, making life much easier. If anyone did want to work with me, just very quickly, I offer 3 products if you like. I can do a brand spotlight health check of your current branding. That's a one-to-one session. Generally do that over Zoom. That's 190 euros. I work also on a day project. This could be suited to kind of a clear and clarify your brand day. It could be that you have a presentation coming up, or there's an aspect of your brand to work on. Or third option there is what I call my full brand defogger intensive. My brand tagline, by the way, is helping you lift the brand fog. I'll help you get that clarity first before you start the consistency. So it needs to be clarity first, then build consistency, because you can't be consistent about something that isn't clear to begin with. And that's can be done over a 2-week period. I'd love you to sign up to my newsletter, which is called The Defogger. I have fun with that. I do like doing that. And I'm going to pass you back over to Kieran. So thanks very much, everybody.
Mary, that's great. Thanks so much for an informative session. If anybody has any questions, they might just pop it into the chat really quickly or raise your hand, and we'll loop back around to you in 2 minutes if that's okay. So just want to highlight some upcoming events on our side. We have a manual handling course that's starting on August 17th there, and that's got a significant discount on that. So if there's any businesses here who might have staff members that would need to have the manual handling course in place, there's only a few spots left on that. So reach out to us if you're interested in booking. Mark Feeling's going to continue his SME business series in September and October. So check out his events. He's doing an additional credit control event as well. That's the discounted rate for members of €20, which is very good value. It's all about getting paid, and sometimes that's a very big challenge for small businesses. And then on our webinar front, then our next webinar coming up is how to optimize your company's LinkedIn profile to get greater engagement. That's with Richard McKeown. But if you scan that QR code there, it'll bring you to our website and you can register for the events. And Mary, if you might just move to the other slide really quickly, I'll just
Yeah.
talk about our upcoming showcase event.
Yeah.
So our next Second Tuesday event then for DLR West will be up in Marley House. It's actually going to kick off at 8 a.m. We just adjusted the time there this morning. So it's going to kick off at 8 a.m. We're going to be joined by Jim Power, the economist, as our guest speaker, and Alan Short is going to MC the event for us. We're going to have members there showcasing their businesses, and it's going to be a very insightful discussion with a bit of Q&A with Jim Power as well about what the economic outlook is like for Ireland and maybe the opportunities and challenges that are there for small businesses. It's a completely free event. There'll be light refreshments and everything. So if you scan that QR code, you can register for the event, and we hope you can make it. Just going to check the chat really quickly, Mary, to see if there's any questions. But I think we're okay, are we? Great. Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, thanks very much, Mary, for a great session, and thanks for everyone attending today.